Sasha Martinengo.
Storming down the pit lane.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time. On balls.co.za.
As mentioned, joining in the studio, of course, co-presenter on Formula One on Supersport. And of course, the man who knows everything technical, as well as everything else on Formula One, Vic Maharaj. Vic, before we talk Formula One, yesterday you did some testing. Of course, you head up your own team in Bridgestone Production Cars.
Yeah, Bridgestone Production Cars. Gennaro Bonafide, I think you've had him here before. We do his Golf 6 GTI. We do the Audi S4 for Melville Priest, the VMP Motorsport team. A reasonably good year so far. Tough to start off with, but we changed marks from the BMW mark to the Audi mark this year. So getting on top of the four-wheel drive Quattro system. We did so well at Le Mans recently, so we've got to get on top of it. But it's coming right. It's coming there together. We did some braking strategy testing yesterday, and it looks pretty good.
Very nice. But now also some news on Gennaro. Might be switching from Class T.
Well, yeah, you always put me on the spot, Sasha. Look, we're looking very strongly. Johan Fourie has announced that he's not going to be racing anymore.
Which is sad.
Which is quite sad.
Yeah.
I mean, a multiple South African champion in all forms of motorsport. And his Audi S4 essentially becomes available on the market. We, being part of the Volkswagen Audi family, have put our little bid in there. I'm going to PE tomorrow with Gennaro's dad. We're going to have a look and do some negotiations. So who knows? We're not saying much, but maybe at the next race or two we could see the four rings with Gennaro as well.
You never know. We'll leave it at that. Don't want to put Vic too much on the mark here. Well, big news that came out this morning in the world of Formula One. Mark Webber has re-signed for an additional year, 2013, with Red Bull Racing. There were so many rumors, Vic, that he was going to go to Ferrari, that somebody else, that one of the younger guys from Toro Rosso, especially Danny Ricciardo, was going to get his seat. I think it's terrific news for Mark. I would be interested to know whether or not he signed the 1 year or whether they pushed him only for a year.
Well, I think it's the past 4 years he signed a single-year contract, and so it's nothing new to him. I think he understands and he believes in his talent. He did a fantastic job at last weekend's Silverstone Grand Prix. He did come out and say that he was in discussions with Ferrari. But I think it's fantastic news for Felipe, because that probably means he's got a very good chance of retaining the seat. And maybe not so good news for Lewis, because I think he was possibly trying to, depending what happens with the McLaren talks later, whether he's going to look at Red Bull or the Ferrari or Ross Brawn's team. But I think it's great news for Mark Webber. I think the timing is perfect.
Yeah.
He's second in the championship. He's been driving exceptionally well. The strategy he used at the last race was perfect. He made it work. He passed Fernando Alonso. So you can't actually ask more from, I wouldn't even say a number two driver, a leading driver in Formula One.
Yeah, I got to say, I just wrote a column for F1 Racing, and I was talking specifically about Mark Webber. And it's just, he's always just under the radar. He's never really in the limelight. Everyone just talks Vettel, Alonso, Hamilton. And here we have Mark Webber, besides Alonso, the only other person who's won twice so far this season, and only 13 points behind Fernando Alonso, and a further 19 points ahead of his teammate.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, who's the number one at Red Bull?
Well, I think we were watching the Valencia Grand Prix and we were wrapping up the show, and we looked at the Drivers' Championship, and we all sort of amazed to see that Mark has crept into second place, and we didn't actually realize that with Sebastian Vettel retiring from the Valencia Grand Prix, and that Mark Webber's doing so well, that he was second, and he established it really properly at the last race meeting. He's always done well at the Silverstone Grand Prix. I think a year or 2 years back they had that wing saga, and he didn't have the right wing, and he still won at the Silverstone Grand Prix. He's always been on the front row.
Not bad for a number two.
That's the one. Not bad for a number two. And I've got to say, to me, he's not driving like a number two driver. He's driving like a leading light in Formula One. And you got to say, normally everyone says top three drivers: Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Vettel. You've got to talk top four drivers now. Yeah,
definitely. I think Mark Webber's right up there. Vic, looking back at the British Grand Prix, it's incredible, after the race, and it was such a magnificent race, but all of these people coming out. Ferrari messed up again on the strategy. Can't believe they've done that. And I read it with disbelief, because I sat there and went, you know what, that was their call. They had to use the option tyres, and that's how it was. I mean, whether they anticipated rain to come, nobody knows, but they chose it their way, and it just showed you that they weren't the fastest package on the day.
Correct, and I think you can't fault anyone for having an incorrect strategy. There was just not enough data from the weekend in dry running to decide what is the optimum strategy. I think Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, a couple of guys chose to go with the prime, which is the harder tyre first, and then eventually to the end switched to the softer tyre, which strategically made the most sense because your fuel load has lightened, the car's lighter, the track's rubbered in. That's the time you want to be running the soft tyre because of the tyre issues that you pick up with soft tyres.
Sure.
On a green track, most sense to go with the harder tyre. So you cannot fault Ferrari for the strategy. Maybe the only thing you could say was Alonso stopped a little bit early for the second stop, but he was doing that in reaction to Webber really setting the sectors alight, purple sectors all over the place. So they maybe jumped 1 or 2 laps early, but it's easy. Hindsight's 20/20 vision, and we all F1 experts at the end of the day. But I think that what they did was right. What Mark Webber did was right. His was just a little bit more right.
Yeah, no, it was. Vic, if we look at, if we look at now, we go forward, we've got 2 races back to back, and then we've got a whole month off. I mean, these 2 races are going to be critical for the championship. They really are. Red Bull seems to be now the top team. And I think you've got to say second after what we saw in Great Britain at Silverstone has got to be Ferrari.
Yeah, I think you spot on there. We all mentioned it at the Valencia race. We were just a bit worried and concerned for the rest of the season. We had had such a fantastic season up to now that maybe Red Bull found a little bit of an advantage. They came up with a huge upgrade at the Valencia race, and it looked good. And then Ferrari obviously was quite strong at this particular race meeting. The track suited them. They were quick through all types of conditions. Thought, okay, well, maybe Ferrari is also lifting the game. But actually, if you really analyze it and go down to it, Red Bull is probably the fastest package. Vettel was very quick after he managed to do his early first pit stop to get past Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
And those 2 cars were clearly faster than everyone else. It was only, you could say, Fernando Alonso's brilliance that kept Ferrari in the fight. But you also got to say the Ferrari is improving on a race-by-race basis, and you cannot say as much for some other teams on the grid.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you bring that up because there are teams that are worrying me. Let's start off with who I think at the moment who's third in the pecking order, and I would say it's got to be Lotus F1. I think it's a really, really strong and competitive package. The biggest problem is that either Raikkonen doesn't get it turned on, or Grosjean has some kind of a problem, and then when he does get going, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's almost quite interesting that if you probably look at it on pure lap times, they could be first or second. The car is really that exceptional. It's since the start of the season, actually since the first pre-season test session, that car's been quick, and it's been upgraded through the season quite logically, and it's been fast. It's just that the team, together with its drivers, cannot put together a faultless weekend. They can't get everything tick all the boxes perfectly. There's always a cross somewhere. So if they want to win a race in Formula 1, because it's so tight at the moment, they've got to make sure that from first lap of first practice to the last lap when you see the checkered flag, it's got to be perfect. They came close in Bahrain. It was reasonably good. And, Romain Grosjean, we said yes, he did a fantastic second stint. He had maybe 10, 12 lap older tyres than everyone else, yet still setting fastest laps. But if you really look at it, he had that first lap incident.
That's it.
And if he didn't have that first lap incident, he wouldn't have to be compromising that way. So he's got to pull back. Kimi's got to be more aggressive in qualifying, and the team itself has got to be better in everything. So I really hope we will see a race win this year for Lotus.
Yeah, I must say, it would just be great for the sport as well. Then, I mean, it's just unbelievable. This has really been a very unpredictable season. It's a very very difficult season to predict. Now you get 2 teams where at certain racetracks they've looked unbelievably strong, and you've sat and said, well, they seem to have an upper hand somewhere along the line. Then it comes into race conditions, and we always have the one team that just seems to go backwards, and the other team was really doing well and then sort of fell apart. And I'm talking about Mercedes GP, and I'm talking about McLaren. Mercedes first, Vic. Is it inherently wrong in the design of that car? I think Schumacher now is doing an exceptional job with an even more difficult car, and we're seeing how he's just dominating Rosberg. Rosberg just can't switch that car on. Michael is at least trying to switch that car on, but something is inherently flawed with that car. No matter what they do, when it's got full tanks, it just cannot go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you look at it in terms of qualifying, Schumacher did a brilliant job. They seem to have compromised their weekend strategy by hoping for rain. That straight away told me they went onto the defensive. They're not convinced that the car's got the pace. Lots of wing angles, so it was just set up for the rain. The prediction was for rain on the weekend, and it was all perfect up until race day. That we saw blue skies and sunshine. And it was just amazing how the weather turned around. And once the car was full with fuel, he just could not get the car to work. He was sliding all over the place. He was holding up a train of cars behind him. And in the end, as the fuel level reduced and he got the soft tires on, I think right at the end, and he passed Lewis Hamilton, I'm talking about Michael Schumacher, his lap times were the equal of Fernando Alonso and Mark Webber. So when in those conditions, the car's flying.
Yeah.
But in those important conditions at the start of the race, he cannot put himself in a position where he's attacking. He's always defending and sort of it's not working out for the team. Rosberg as well can't do it. Normally, when one driver struggles and the other driver is quick, it shows you that there are problems in the team. They cannot resolve it. They've got some very clever guys there. I'm sure they're working around the clock to do it. Rosberg's come out and said, please guys, we need to lift this car up now. And if you're saying this sort of thing halfway through the season, you've really got to throw everything at it while they're already concentrating trying to build and design next year's car. So how do you split this resource? Do you take resource off next year's car and put it onto this year's car? It's a big issue for them, and I'm not so sure how they will resolve it. They'll be quick at tracks like coming up now, Hockenheim, where traction is important. Hungary, remember they were very fast at the Monaco Grand Prix.
Correct.
So those type of circuits will suit them. The flowing corners, I think they're going to really struggle with the heavy fuel loads, and let's hope they do it right. It'll only be beneficial for us to watch five teams in the fight.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, we're talking Formula One with Vic Maharaj. Let's find out what has gone wrong.
It's quite amazing. You know, we actually saw that they were very quick at the start of the season qualifying. They locked out the front row at the first race of the year, and then they were very quick in qualifying, but always having a problem in the race. So you knew that they were not quite up there in sussing out the Pirelli tires. And then they had the Mugello in-season test.
Yes.
Came up with a slightly raised nose section, although still not quite the bump of everyone else. And that was purely to get better aerodynamics underneath the car going to the floor and increase downforce. It seemed to work at Canada. Everyone was raving about it, but you could see it wasn't quite there. And then Valencia, the wheels fell off literally, and at Silverstone. Whitmarsh came out and said, we've got to work to understand the tires, we've got to work to understand the car, and we've got to minimize mistakes. And it's just amazing to say that the team manager or team director is saying that halfway through a season, when they started off the season with the fastest car, they have no clue what's wrong, and that's the problem. If you analyze Jenson Button's car, Lewis Hamilton's car at this particular race, Jenson ran a completely different setup to Lewis, completely different aero settings, yet the cars were nowhere. Lewis was fighting at the bottom half of the top 10, where he was aiming to fight at the top half. They've got problems. They can't switch the tires on. They can't get heat into the tires. Then they get too much heat in the tires. Then the car slides. If you look at it, it's the Lotus, it's the Red Bull and the Ferrari. If you look at them through the high-speed corners, it's a completely different car to the McLaren. Lewis is fighting the car.
Yeah.
Every time you hear Lewis on the radio speaking to his engineer, he sounds frustrated. He sounds upset. He doesn't sound happy. The only time I've heard him sound happy this year was when he got poles, or when he won the Montreal race, the Canadian Grand Prix. So they've got issues. They don't know what's wrong. They're the only team that doesn't have the bump on the nose, except for the Marussia team, and that's no claim to fame.
That's no yardstick, that's for sure.
And we all initially at the start of the year said, well, the Ferrari doesn't look good. But you know what? A car looks good when it's fast on the racetrack, and we don't notice the bumps anymore. We don't notice it. So the actual aerodynamic philosophy behind the car is different, and it is absolutely not working. We do know that there's quite a strong update that's coming at the Hockenheim Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. A very visual one. You're not going to miss it. So whether that means that they're going to try the bump on the nose or not, we're not sure. Maybe copy what Red Bull's done with the rear end of the car, treating for more aerodynamic downforce. But it's just amazing to me. Paddy Lowe, with the technical director, Jenson Button. Jenson, one set of tires to the next, I can't get the tires switched on. This set of tires feels different. That was almost like what Helmut Marko was saying 2 weekends ago.
Correct.
That one set of tires different, and you only get that sort of complaints from a team that sometimes gets it right and sometimes get it horribly wrong. And for me, it's just amazing. McLaren was one of the teams over the past 3 or 4 years that you knew started off the year maybe mediocre and built up very strongly as the year progressed. one of the only teams to challenge Red Bull, and that's not quite the case now.
Yeah.
We laughed at Ferrari when they came out with the pull rod front suspension.
I know. I actually wanted you to sort of explain that, because there's a difference in something called a suspension, called a pull rod, and one is a push rod, and these kind of things. But Ferrari did. They went against the norm and decided on this pull rod system. Vic, and then after like 2 or 3 races, everyone was in outcry. They thought Ferrari have messed this thing completely. They thought they were going to redesign the car, put in the push rod system. They didn't. They believed in their design philosophy.
It all comes down to center of gravity. What the pull rod suspension did, and remember, it was pioneered by in current Formula One by Adrian Newey on the rear end of the Red Bull.
Yeah.
And Ferrari adapted it and put it to the front end. A lot of people felt that the suspension geometry of current Formula One cars would not work. And initially, they all were all proved right. But Ferrari persevered. All credit to Pat Fry and the design team at Ferrari, Tombazis as well, Nicholas Tombazis, and they've made this car work. It has great front end grip. Remember turn 1 when we watched it on camera? The way that Ferrari turned into turn 1 was just sublime. And now what it seems to work is that center of gravity looks to be the holy grail. So you mount all your shock absorbers, all your suspension components underneath the car, not on top of the car. So effectively all that does, it just reduces the center of gravity of the car.
All right.
It gives you more handling, gives you more cornering power, etc. So we hear now that McLaren are investigating this for next year's car. Maybe Red Bull is looking at it. So from a team that was ridiculed at the start of the season, now they seem to be leading the actual design race. I mean, fantastic news. But teams have got to react now, and I don't know what McLaren's going to do. It's really what we're going to see. The upgrade that they bring at Hockenheim is going to be hugely important for them to see if they can challenge for the championship, because I mean, he's 30 points odd behind
Correct.
Fernando Alonso, and they go into that 4-week break where technically no one is allowed to work. So if they don't get it right in these next 2 races, I think their season's over.
Yeah, they're going to be, unfortunately, not challenging for the top. Very interesting news has just come out of the Daily Mail in the UK, saying that Lewis Hamilton is ready to open talks with Lotus Formula One.
Oh my word!
Yeah, I think it's just a little. Somebody wanted to write a column and then realized, oh damn, Red Bull have announced that Webb has signed up. I don't see him going to Renault. If anything, Renault would be stupid to get rid of either one of their drivers at the moment. Yes, if they could get a Lewis Hamilton, but who do you get rid of?
Yeah, it's
Because Grosjean seems to be better than Raikkonen.
Yeah, look, I would tend to think Grosjean's your bet for the future. He's driving fantastically well. He's really impressed everyone. I think we've raved about him. It just shows you if you had a raw deal in Formula One at your start,
wow,
and you could be in the Renault team at that stage. I think he was partnering Fernando Alonso at that stage. You get a raw deal, and it just shows you if everything's aligned, the stars are aligned, as they say. You got a manager who believes in you. Eric Boulier, to his credit, brought Grosjean back.
Correct.
And again, a lot of people thought it was the wrong person, but he's been proved right. He's fantastically fast in qualifying, great in the race when he doesn't crash on the first or the second lap. But I think that's just the impetuousness of youth. I think he will tone it down. He's got married now, so maybe he'll calm down a bit. We'll see how it all
or he might go even crazy.
He might go tilt, as they say. But at the end of the day, Lotus has done a great job. The team for me that needs a top line driver now, if I had to analyze the whole field, it has to be Williams.
Yes.
I think those two are not doing justice to the team, to the car. They've sacrificed a lot of points. They need a top line driver. So you could almost see a situation, if this rumor is true, Lewis to Lotus, maybe Kimi to
Williams. Yeah,
which he nearly did.
He nearly did right at the beginning, before he came back to Lotus. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Williams they've proven that they're actually a race winner. Number one, they've really got speed around the Silverstone track. That car was very, very quick, and I credit to Bruno Senna. I think he did a terrific job. But imagine there was somebody quicker in that car.
Oh, well, look, I mean, we all expected Pastor Maldonado to do a great job. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. I think got a bit of the red mist, as we call it in the motorsport circle.
Pastor Maldonado.
He was upset when it was a Perez going around the outside of him, and he remembered Valencia and Lewis. So let me try the same thing, but he lost control of the car, got a big fine as well. So look, we know he's quick on his day, but unfortunately he has one brilliant race and maybe 3 very weird races, and caused by his own doing, not by the car, not by the team.
Correct.
The car's been reliable, it's been quick, and the team expected a very strong British Grand Prix. The track suited the car to a T. It was the same compound of tires from the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona, same sort of type of track characteristic. So we knew Ferrari was going to be strong, and we expected Williams to be there. And the mere fact that they were not, I've got to say, if I was the team management, I'd be having a strong chat to Maldonado, except it could be that Maldonado is funding the team. So how do you
exactly.
how do you tell him otherwise?
No, it is a precarious situation for Williams, but I agree they do need a top-line driver. Vic, let's leave it there. It's always great to speak to you, my friend. I'm sure we'll talk to you before we get to Germany. We've got Germany, and then is it Hungary?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, Germany and Hungary back-to-back, and then, of course, the 4-week break. So an outstanding halfway through the season. I don't think a lot of people would have thought Ferrari were going to be there. But Alonso, he's got a long way to go if he wants to win this championship, especially against Red Bull.
Well, I think if you just ask me for two analysis of the year, I'd say the superb performance of Fernando Alonso is clearly establishing himself as the best driver in Formula One. Second thing, the Pirelli tyres again. I think it's a fantastic thing by them. The tyres are brilliant. We criticised the tyres at a couple of years ago, which was just lasting too long. They've taken the bull by the horns. They've done it perfectly, and it set up a brilliant season, and I hope it carries on.
Yeah. There we go. Midterm report on Formula One with Vic Maharaj. This is Gearz on Balls Visual Radio.
Gearz on bulls.co.za with Sasha Martinengo.
He's kept himself out of trouble.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.